I first was accosted, I should say, by DCF by actually with numerous phone calls and left voicemails. And one day, one of them showed up at my doorstep and told me that I had to let him in my house or they could come back with a search warrant and my kids will be taken away. At that time, the first initial ringing of my doorbell, they wouldn't tell me what the allegations were or who they were from. My first biggest mistake was I let them in my house, and the reason why I did that was because I'm a good mother, a great mother. There was no issues, so I figured it was better to let them in to see what they had to say. Big mistake, because whatever you say to them, they totally twist it in their reports and it will go against you. They told me that I was not allowed to sit in the room while they spoke to my children individually. The first initial visit, he brought, I'll call a buffer, to try and get me to sit in another room with her, explaining she's been through this ordeal with her own family and everything's okay. He's just asking them some questions. And what I found out through my children afterwards, if he would just ask a vague question and they would answer it, in his report, totally twisted everything around, like say if I wouldn't cook dinner. Had my daughter open up the cabinets in my kitchen, saying that they want to make sure to see if there was enough food in the house for me to feed my children. And meanwhile, my kids have explained to them that my mother cooks dinner for us. So he was snooping around or having it be like, oh no, don't worry, we're just checking to make sure there's food. Now above my stove, I have one cabinet that probably had 5, I would say, gift bottles. One was from my high school reunion, 10th year reunion, which was over 30 years ago, with a class photo on it. Never opened, never touched, probably fermented. Another one was for like a 50th birthday friend, a baby shower. It was a total of, I think, maybe 5 different bottles, just gift ones. He wrote down in his report that I had a cabinet stocked with alcohol, some were 3/4 empty, and that was a blatant lie. They weren't even opened. But in his report, it made it seem, I remember there was one bottle, and it was pucker watermelon, and it had just the tiniest left in there, probably sitting in there for 5 years, that I actually brought it out, opened it up, and it smelled so bad that everyone sitting there in the room was horrified. And I'm like, really? I would drink this? So it made it seem that I was just drinking away every day. I felt like all hell broke loose. It was horrifying. Next thing I know, I'm being charged with neglect for my children, and they tried to reach out to, they didn't even leave messages, but called, say, 2 of my really good friends, not leaving voicemails or messages. They had missed calls, and when they called them back, it would be DCF, and no one would give them any information. I had a family member, because it was on the reports, who totally acted like there was going to be this big intervention, that I have this big drinking problem at my job, everyone's worried about me, all just lie after lie after lie. And when they would even come to my house, they scrutinized everything. My house was clean, there was food, my kids had beds to sleep on, so there was really no form of neglect whatsoever. My children will now be moving on to the next level. One will be starting 10th grade, another one is a senior, great passing grades, good remarks from all the teachers. My kids strive well in school. They're typical teenagers. They're not perfect, but they're not neglected. My kids recently, we just had their physicals. They go to the dentist every 6 months for teeth cleaning. One just got his braces removed. They both wear eyeglasses, get new glasses yearly. Matter of fact, they have all their shots. If there was ever anything wrong, that is the first thing I do with my children is I bring them to the doctors or wherever, they need to be seen. I found attorney Kevin Seaver, which I wish I found him before I even opened up that door from the first time. I just happened to Google, and actually he wasn't the first person I looked at. There was a couple of other ones, and I read their reviews. And I don't know how, I just stumbled across him and I watched a video. And I actually liked him. There was something about him that attracted me to him that I said, this is going to be the guy. He won't take no crap. He'll be in my corner. I probably, if I didn't have him sitting there at my kitchen table side by side to me when I was getting badgered by DCF, I probably would have been arrested because I wouldn't have been able to contain myself with the ridiculous sorts of questions they asked. So based on his reviews and just by his video, I knew he was the one. And it was the best decision I've ever made. My charges of neglect were dropped. Something that probably was assumed to take maybe 6 or more months, and less than 4 months. Probably due to the fact that they couldn't really find anything. They were fishing, and for having Kevin Seaver, attorney Seaver, by my side, give me the advice on maybe even what questions to answer and which ones not even to answer, or even for my children, because they were so ridiculous and they just kept asking the same questions 30 different ways. My kids were scared, so even when it came to the time, say, for one of my children to open up the cabinets in the kitchen, the way that they questioned it to my children was not the way they put everything in the report. Made it seem like, look, she's got alcohol in here, and so my children were so intimidated that if they said the sun was shining, they found a way to darken that up and twist everything, even what my children say. I should have never allowed DCF into my home, regardless of the threatening words that they were using against me, to speak to my children, because that was the first and the biggest mistake that I made. What I should have said was, I am hiring and consulting with attorney Kevin Seaver, and shut the door in their face. Because with all the threats, they weren't going to come back with a search warrant or with the police to remove my children. That is a blatant lie. That is a scare tactic which they used. Even though if you did nothing wrong, do not open that door. You are opening up Pandora's box. The second mistake that I made was allowing DCF to speak to my children alone, without my presence. My kids felt so much more at ease having attorney Seaver to be there to advise them and be supportive right by their side. I never knew that my kids had any constitutional right or say in any of this until attorney Kevin Seaver gave me that information. DCF was not going to break or bend the law with attorney Kevin Seaver at our side. The biggest thing I want to say is, from the initial even contact they have with you, don't let them in whatsoever. No matter that you didn't do anything wrong, because that's the biggest mistake I or any one of you guys can make. Consult attorney Kevin Seaver before they're going to try and threaten you, take your kids away. You're going to believe them. I did, because you're scared, because you are shocked. You don't know why they're at your door. Don't do it. My whole life was turned upside down from the initial contact with DCF. It was only until I researched and not only hired immediately on the spot attorney Seaver, that actually, after my first initial meeting with him and then having him meet my children, that I could finally sleep actually eat and try and get on with my day, because the thoughts of DCF taking my children away from me on false allegations was destroying my daily life. I know in my heart that if I did not hire attorney Kevin Seaver, that this case would have gone on, probably for a good year, year and a half, a total nightmare trying to just get DCF off my back. Not only did he teach me what my legal rights were, his advice was sound and solid, and it actually got my case closed in 4 months instead of even maybe the 6 months that he even first thought. DCF will twist everything so right before your eyes that you have no control over it. The most important thing to me in my life is my kids' well-being. I love them. I take care of them. They're teenagers. They're not perfect, and I'm not perfect. But I will not be judged for neglect by just some false allegations. I hired the best attorney that is around for anything to deal with DCF. If you go anywhere else, I don't know what will turn out for you. You probably won't be as happy as I am today. I researched, and I was almost going to go with a different attorneys for just other reasons. But after watching his videos, I realized that his knowledge of 20 some odd, almost 30 years of dealing with DCF, that he was the most knowledgeable, knew all the rights, and knew exactly how to get DCF off your back and allegations or false allegations completely wiped from your name. For my first home visit with attorney Seaver and his assistant in my home, he came prepared. I was a little shocked. He had a step-by-step on how things were going to play out. I have teenagers. You know how difficult they can be. They felt very at ease. They could tell him anything. They told him the truth. They told him how some things that were written were not the truth, and he protected my children while they were being battered by the DCF worker. If it wasn't for him by their side, I really don't know what the outcome would have been. And it would have destroyed my family. They tried. I would have signed medical and school releases for the DCF to attain my children's information because I was not knowledgeable that I had a right to not do that. Attorney Seaver educated me in this process, and I was able to get that information from the doctors or schools without DCF involvement, only from learning the information that Attorney Seaver provided for me. It was a very critical move on my part to have this knowledge thanks to Attorney Seaver, because then DCF would have just had access to any information regarding my children's medical, dental, school, all their information. And this would have violated my children's rights, never mind my own, and violated my entire family. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would basically rate Attorney Seaver a 20. But since we can't go there, a 10 plus plus plus. I would recommend Attorney Seaver to basically anyone, any family, friends, strangers, to hire him. If you go elsewhere, you will not get the end results that you will either hope for or that you're looking for without having him by your side. Period. Bottom line. Don't spend good money on a bad result. Probably one of the most important aspects of me hiring Attorney Seaver is I didn't not only have to call his office at any given hour, but he had given me his personal cell phone, which if I called on a Friday night at 9 o'clock, he answered it, he picked it up. Whether it was a weekend, late at night, if I left a voicemail, within probably 30 minutes, he called me back to see what the problem was. If I was just having a bad day, I needed some advice. He was always, always, always there 24/7. You can't get that from just anybody. And that, my friends, is what separates him from any other attorney that you want to, if you have a problem with DCF. Don't look anywhere else. I can't make that clear enough. That's why I'm saying if you're a normal person, everyday divorced mother, raising 3 children like me, and that could be your biggest mistake. My guard was down, and that's the reason why I let them in, is because I have a clean home, I have food on my table, I'm dressed accordingly, and so are my kids. They're nice and clean. So I was like, why not open the door and show them what I have? Don't make that mistake. That was the first mistake I made, because that just started the whole ordeal. It doesn't matter what you have for your house looking clean, not that they twist everything. Attorney Seaver did not judge me. He advocated for me, which was, I found, a big plus on my side, because I had good days and I had bad days, but he was always there. So if you, as a loving parent, if you had a medical issue with one of your children, wouldn't you go to the best of the best? So if you have DCF breathing down your back, why would you not hire the best of the best in those circumstances? Which, in fact, is attorney Kevin Seaver. Period. That's it. There is no one else like him. End of story. After when I first came across attorney Seaver online, started to read his testimonials, and one after the other, after the other, after the other, was just whether people hired him or just consulted with him. The end result was always the same. Case closed. He was always there for everybody. Each of his clients came to your home, was there anytime you needed him, regardless of a weekday, weekend, day or night. I don't feel as though you would get that with any other law firm. After everything's all said and done, I am one of his successful stories, and I'm sure I won't be the last. I needed his services by my side because I did make the mistake of letting DCF into my home, and I needed his guidance and his knowledge to get me in a right place to get DCF out of my life. They would come to my home and badger and berate me in front of my children, and I didn't know that I had a constitutional right to not allow this. During a second visit, once when I had attorney Kevin Seaver by my side with his assistant, the DCF worker who would berate me and badger me was now sitting in a corner, cowardly looking, because he realized the force that he was up against. And we were now in control of the meetings and what would take place with the questioning, and how I or my children were going to be treated by DCF in my home.